what we see going on in the public schools is an uncanny parallel to the Third Reich.
This is how Alliance Defending Freedom thinks about the public education system.
And the government is trying to usurp the role of parents.
They're radical, they're fringy, they're not grounded in truth.
Religious liberty is not safe in the United States as long as we have the kind of public school system we have.
The plan that they outline on these videos is nothing less than taking down the public education system.
Our goal is not to just throw stones. Our goal is to take down the education system as we know it today.
Okay.
This has been the mission of the religious right really since desegregation.
This is the Alliance Defending Freedom, the Christian right legal organization designated a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center that is trying to destroy public education in America.
No matter what they say, they're not really interested in protecting freedoms. They're interested in working to push their own radical, unpopular beliefs on Americans.
The Alliance Defending Freedom, or ADF, was launched in 1994 by leaders in the Christian right community.
We've been duped into believing that somehow you can separate your Christianity, your religion, from what's going on in the country politically. And you cannot, they're intertwined.
Today, it's a nearly $100 million operation with a single goal. We are here to keep the door open for the gospel.
Alliance Defending Freedom is sort of on this mission to strip Americans of their rights and undermine democracy.
Kayla Hancock is the director of the Power and Influence Project at Accountable.us, a government watchdog aimed at holding special interests accountable for their influence in politics.
They were obviously the lawyers behind the recent 303 Creative versus Ellen's case, which upended decades of civil rights protections for LGBTQ Americans.
So to see the kind of ruling we got was just an answer to prayer.
They also brought the Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado case around the baker who wanted to deny service to same-sex couples who were getting married.
I'm Michael Ferris. I'm the president and general counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom that defended Jack today.
They were behind the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade, and they're obviously not stopping there.
We want Roe versus Wade reversed, but that's just kind of a huge milestone along the path to becoming a pro-life nation.
And now this, where they've sued to remove one of the most popular abortion pills from the market nationwide.
This case is very important because it concerns the FDA's approval and continual deregulation of the chemical abortion drug.
And, I don't know when it stops, right?
And they really have demonstrated that they should be taken seriously.
Nick Sergey is executive director at Documented, a watchdog group that has been tracking the Alliance Defending Freedom and other organizations working in this area.
Documented has obtained internal videos, documents, and other materials from the Alliance Defending Freedom and ZICLAG, and this shows that they want to do nothing less really than take down the public education system.
And the fundamental change is to force, via a Supreme Court decision, a constitutionally mandated school voucher system.
Bill Barr, the former Attorney General under Trump, laid out the basis of this project.
It may no longer be fair, practical, or even constitutional to provide publicly funded education solely through the vehicle of state-operated schools.
This has been Mike Farris's life's work.
Michael Ferris is the former CEO and general counsel at ADF. He has been a leader in the homeschool and school voucher crusades.
The privatization of public education is very good for that system.
Ever since the 1970s, he's been making similar arguments that he makes in these recordings.
The voucher system, one of the most necessary changes that our nation's education system needs.
And you fast forward to today, now they're just being taken seriously.
I believe it's a winnable case now. Whereas 10 or 15 years ago, it probably wasn't.
Alliance Defending Freedom is a highly networked organization, and many of the organizations that they work in coalition with have really, since early 2021, been trying to fan the flames around LGBTQ rights in schools, and in particular, what they describe as critical race theory being taught, but is really just conversations taking place in the schools around racism, legacy of slavery in this country.
We are now dealing with a radicalized, indoctrinated Marxist generation of youth that are actually the agents of the nation's destruction.
And they want to use the anger that groups that they work with have helped whip up, really to try and push this legal strategy and do what the religious right has wanted for decades, really back to desegregation, and that's to push school vouchers.
The type of voucher for all program they're looking to secure would allow parents to remove their children from public schools, but would still force the government to subsidize their private education with public money, even at religious institutions.
I think that we could establish this as a constitutional right.
Ziklag is an organization that channels money to projects on the right. Peter Bollinger is one of the leaders of Ziklag, and he chairs their education committee.
For an investment of a few $1 million, we can literally and potentially shift the flow of approximately $750 billion of education funds.
But in these recordings, we're seeing the kind of ground floor for this legal strategy.
We intend to bring a handful of cases to challenge the constitutionality of what's going on in the public schools.
You hear them lay out their strategy as including very clearly judicial selection.
Judicial selection would be very much a part of our strategy.
They probably have specific judges in mind. They certainly have specific circuits in mind.
We're going to file one of these cases in the Eighth Circuit. The Eighth Circuit is the best circuit in the country for principled originalist judges.
Here we get a really unique insight into what they're hoping to achieve at this court in the next few years.
In this environment, vouchers may be the only workable and the only constitutional solution.
The same people who oppose Medicare for all, they love vouchers for all, including for the children of the wealthy.
Carol Buris is a former public school teacher and principal. She now serves as the executive director of the Network for Public Education.
We see the rhetoric and the attacks on public schools ramp up, accusing us of indoctrinating children.
There's a clear, open effort to indoctrinate kids in this woke ideology.
And it's really being used to turn the public, especially more conservative parents, against their public schools.
It has shifted from an education to an indoctrination. And I've seen that in the last few years. It's gotten even worse.
And they make it very clear what it is that they want to accomplish, which is the destruction of public education in our country.
The public schools, because of market forces, would be really compelled to clean up their act.
Problem is, no one ever follows the logic through of what would happen if we had a marketplace system in the United States. And that was the only system we had, which is the ultimate goal. There are going to be places where parents are not going to get the schools that they want, if they can get a school at all. Because that's how the marketplace works, right? It goes where there are customers. So what happens when we have areas where there just are not that many families to serve? Where will there be a school? Where does your child go?
And there are very real issues with moving towards a fully voucher-based approach to our nation's education.
We have years of research on voucher programs, and it's very clear. Students who leave public schools, on average, for a private school, do worse. And sometimes a lot worse, like 0.40 standard deviations worse, which is huge.
Given the current makeup of the Supreme Court, I really believe that we could have success.
Will they be successful? You know what? I honestly don't know, given this particular Supreme Court and some of the rulings that they've had in the past.
And in many ways, the ADF and affiliated groups have already been successful.
There really has been an almost 180-degree shift in how the Supreme Court thinks about public subsidies for private religious institutions.
Kevin Wellner is a professor of education, policy, and law at CU Boulder. He also directs the National Education Policy Center.
Vouchers for religious schools were thought to be constitutionally forbidden by the Establishment Clause in the 1970s, for example. And then we had a decision out of Cleveland in 2003 called the Zellman decision. It was a challenge to the voucher policy in Cleveland, where the court said, no, that's actually constitutionally allowed based on a variety of arguments, but in particular the argument that it's not the state deciding which schools receive the money, it's the parents deciding which schools to send their kids to, and then the government then steps in and funds those schools. And then we had this decision in year 2020 out of Montana, the Espinoza decision, where the court said, under these particular circumstances where you have a voucher policy or you have a state policy that funds some private schools, the Constitution actually requires that you also fund religious private schools. Otherwise, it's discriminating and basically withholding money from an institution because it is religious. And then we had a decision 2 years later out of Maine, the Carson v. Macon decision, where the court built on that and extended it even further. So we're sort of creeping toward decisions that could be even more radical.
In recordings, ADF seems to believe that now is the time to strike and enact their vision for our country.
Supreme Court is better than I've ever seen it. And I think that we have to take our shot now.
What we know about this project is probably just the tip of the iceberg, but this is where they're coming from, and they won't stop because they, I think, sincerely view public schools as something that is that bad, that dangerous, that evil, that they will never stop.
We are committed to excellence. We are committed to victory.
It's terrifying, honestly.
Thank you so much for watching our video. If you'd like to see more stories like this one, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel to get more Perfect Union in your feed. And if you have any ideas for stories that you would like for us to investigate, just drop them in the comments below.